The man's hand lingered too long on the girl's shoulder. "She's just shy around strangers," he said with a polished smile. "Aren't you, Maya?" Staff Sergeant Elias Ward didn't move a muscle. Not yet. Not outwardly. But behind the stoic discipline of his Queen's Guard uniform, his mind sharpened with focus. The man's voice was too smooth. His smile too rehearsed. And the girl? The girl looked scared in a way Elias recognized. It was a humid morning outside St. James's Palace, where the Royal Guard was stationed to welcome a delegation from the Commonwealth. Tourists clustered behind the velvet cordons, cameras raised, sunglasses pushed up on sweaty foreheads. Children sat on shoulders or waved little Union Jacks. Elias Ward, in full ceremonial attire, red tunic, white belt, polished boots, and the iconic bearskin hat, stood sentinel at the southern flank. The rifles weren't loaded. The duty was symbolic, but his awareness was anything but. His body remained motionless, but his eyes scanned the crowd with surgical precision. His training in counter-surveillance, honed in deployments to Kandahar and Basra, never left him. People assumed the guards were ornamental. They weren't. They were soldiers. And Elias had always watched. He noticed her because she didn't behave like the other kids. Where other children leaned over barriers, pointed at the guards, or tugged playfully on their parents' arms, this girl stood completely still. Too still. Maybe 8 years old. Long sleeves, even in the summer heat. Shoulders hunched like she was trying to become invisible. And then there were the eyes. Big, brown, terrified. She scanned everything. The exits, the tourists, her guardian's face, with the kind of hyper-awareness Elias had only seen in war zones. People who watched everything because they were trying to stay alive. The man with her was mid-40s, trim, tanned, designer clothes, and an accent that walked the line between London charm and rehearsed sophistication. He smiled and made polite jokes to passers-by, referring to the girl as his niece from Birmingham. But Elias had already spotted the white marks where the man's fingers gripped the girl's upper arm when no one was looking. The way she flinched. The way her body tensed when he whispered. That wasn't parenting. That was control. "You're making a scene," the man hissed at her. "Smile, right now." The girl's lips twitched upward like she'd been trained. The man knelt and fixed her sock while his other hand yanked the edge of her sleeve up. Elias saw it. Purple-green bruises, patterned like fingers. But it wasn't until the tourist behind them asked, "Are you excited to see the guards, sweetheart?" that Elias saw it. The moment. The man answered quickly, "She's not much of a talker." "Right, Maya." The girl nodded, but there was a hesitation, half a beat too long. That pause said more than words. For the next 20 minutes, Elias tracked them with peripheral vision. Every movement told a story. The girl's flinching. Her tendency to walk precisely one step behind the man. How she didn't speak, unless spoken to. And even then, only after his approval. He saw the man push her gently toward a quieter corner near the palace gates, subtly out of view from the CCTV camera arc. That's when Elias started running scenarios in his head. He wasn't just a ceremonial guard. Before this, he had been military intelligence. He knew the indicators, grooming behaviors, controlled body language, public manipulation tactics. And everything in this scene screamed wrong. An older woman beside the man spoke kindly to the girl. "I taught primary school for 30 years," she said warmly. "You have your mother's eyes, darling." The man smiled. "Actually, I'm her uncle, temporary guardian. Her mum's not well." The girl's eyes flicked upward, her breath catching at the lie. She didn't nod. She didn't correct him either. She just stood there, frozen. Elias noticed something else. The backpack, a pink one, cartoon rabbits on the sides. The name tag was flipped inward. Every child's backpack had a name. Why hide it? The man crouched down to whisper again. "No one's looking for you," he murmured. "Don't even think about running." The girl blinked slowly, holding back tears. She didn't reply. She didn't argue. She simply raised her hand to tuck hair behind her ear. But the motion didn't stop there. Her fingers curled into a fist, opened, then pressed it to the opposite palm. Elias's heart stopped. He knew that signal. Everyone trained in safeguarding knew that signal. The girl had just issued the universal distress signal for children in danger. A silent cry for help. The man didn't miss it either. His expression changed. Charm stripped away in an instant. He seized the girl's wrist, eyes darting to see who had noticed. Elias had noticed, and so had the older couple beside them. "I think she dropped something," the old man called out, stepping in front of the pair. The man hesitated. That was all Elias needed. For the first time in 15 years of service, Staff Sergeant Elias Ward broke formation. The sound of his boots cutting through the ceremonial courtyard silenced the crowd. Cameras turned, mouths opened. "Sir," Elias called, voice like a gunshot, "let go of the child." The man froze, stunned. "She's my niece. We're late. What is this about?" She used a recognized distress signal. "I'm intervening under safeguarding protocol." "You're what? This is outrageous." Elias was already moving, positioning himself between the man and the girl. Tourists scattered as backup security moved in, but Elias didn't wait. "If you don't release her arm, I'll remove your hand myself." "Is this some prank?" The man tried again, tone sharpening. "You have no authority over family matters." "Then provide identification," Elias snapped. "Proof of guardianship. Now." The man reluctantly handed over an ID, Jonathan Reeves. Said he ran a nonprofit for at-risk children. The girl, he claimed, was Maya Carter, visiting London after her mother's hospitalization. Everything felt fabricated. A female officer crouched beside the child. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The girl hesitated. The man answered for her. "Maya Carter." But then the girl whispered something almost inaudibly. "I'm not Maya." The officer leaned closer. "What's your real name, love?" She looked at Elias. "My name is Zoe." She glanced at her backpack. Zoe Carter. Elias stepped forward and gently turned the tag over. Written in childish handwriting, Zoe Carter, Year 3, Heathridge Primary. Not Maya, not from Birmingham. Reeves lunged for the bag, but 2 guards restrained him mid-motion. The crowd gasped. The older woman clutched her husband. The tourists who had been filming now had their phones down, realizing this wasn't a show. It was real. And it wasn't over yet. Jonathan Reeves did not go quietly. The moment the name Zoe Carter left the little girl's lips and the child's backpack exposed the lie, something in him snapped. Gone was the charming man with the tailored blazer and careful smile. What remained was a predator, exposed and cornered. "I told you to shut your mouth," he snarled, lunging again. Not at the backpack this time, but at the child herself. Zoe screamed. But Elias Ward was faster. He moved with the same instinct that had once carried him across enemy lines to save a pinned-down unit in Helmand Province. One moment, he was ceremonial stillness in red wool. The next, a blur of calculated violence. Reeves reached for Zoe's arm. Elias intercepted, knocking the man's wrist aside with a downward block that redirected the force. Reeves pivoted, bringing an elbow up toward Elias's face, but Elias countered, knee to thigh, twist at the shoulder, and the man was slammed chest first into the stone flagstones. The crowd erupted. Screams, gasps, phones dropping. Not just a royal guard breaking formation now, but fighting. The old rules were gone. "Get the child away," Elias barked. The female officer obeyed, pulling Zoe behind a protective semicircle of palace security who had flooded the square. Reeves struggled against Elias's grip, rage rising like a boil. "You idiot," he hissed. "You don't know who I am. You've just made a huge mistake." Elias didn't respond. He knew predators often counted on reputation, wealth, or fear. But this wasn't court or PR. This was a child in danger. And Elias wasn't a man who hesitated when children were involved. Police sirens echoed from the outer gates, approaching fast. Reeves glanced around like a trapped animal. His hand reached for something in his coat. Elias saw the movement, recognized the body language. Weapon. The blade came free fast, a thin stiletto hidden behind the inner pocket seam. Reeves whirled around and slashed toward the officers, clearing space in front of him with wild, dangerous arcs. Zoe screamed again. "I'll kill her," Reeves roared. "I swear to God, if I can't have her, no one can." What followed was not ceremony, not training, not routine. It was survival. Elias stepped into the blade's path like a man stepping into a storm. The steel slashed across his arm, tearing fabric and flesh. Blood bloomed through the sleeve of his red coat. He didn't flinch. Pain didn't register, only target, motion, and outcome. Disarm. Neutralize. Protect the child. He slammed his injured arm into Reeves's shoulder, locking the knife arm in place with his own body. His other hand drove into the man's ribs, then neck, then temple. 3 strikes. Swift, brutal, efficient. Reeves collapsed. Conscious, but barely. "You don't get to run," Elias growled, pinning him down. "Not from this. Not from her." Police stormed the square seconds later. Officers cuffed Reeves and took the knife. Elias backed away slowly, breathing hard, sleeve soaked red. His pulse still pounded with leftover adrenaline. Zoe huddled behind a guard, trembling, eyes wide. "It's okay," Elias said gently, voice softer now. "He can't hurt you anymore." A paramedic approached. "You're bleeding badly." Elias ignored his own wound. "Her first," he said, gesturing to Zoe. "She needs medical and a social worker." The medic hesitated but nodded. As Zoe was examined, Elias sat down on a stone bench, exhaustion creeping in now that the danger had passed. A uniformed officer, Detective Inspector Malley, approached. "We've identified her. Zoe Carter, 8 years old, went missing 20 days ago walking home from school in Surrey." He paused. "Reeves has no relation to her. Claims to run a children's charity. No such registration exists." "What's on his phone?" Elias asked. Malley hesitated. "Images. Multiple children. Conversations with others. We think this wasn't his first." Elias clenched his bloodied hand into a fist. "Then I hope the next thing on that phone is enough to lock him up for life." They didn't let Elias leave immediately. He gave his full statement, had his arm stitched on site by palace medics, and was then escorted to a quiet chamber inside the palace to rest. His commanding officer, Captain Havers, arrived within the hour. "You understand," Havers began, arms crossed behind his back, "that you've broken centuries of protocol today." "Yes, sir," Elias replied calmly, "and I'd do it again." The captain studied him. "The Crown is aware. So is Parliament. The footage is everywhere. You're a hero, Sergeant Ward. But the regiment must consider precedent. This was not an easy call." Elias didn't argue. He didn't try to defend himself. He simply said, "She was alone. No one else saw her." "And you did." Havers nodded. The right thing rarely fits within perfect regulation. An hour later, Elias visited Zoe in a palace medical room. She sat on a couch, flanked by 2 female officers, and wrapped in a soft white blanket. Her backpack sat neatly beside her, this time with the name tag fully visible. She looked up when he entered. "You stayed," she whispered. "I told you I would," Elias replied, voice soft. She smiled, just barely. "Do you want to know something?" she asked. Elias knelt to her level. "I saw your boots first. They were shiny. Then your eyes. You weren't looking like a statue. You were really looking. That's why I did the signal." Elias swallowed the lump forming in his throat. "You were brave. That signal saved your life." "No," she said seriously. "You did." They sat together for another few minutes. Then one of the officers entered with her phone. "Her parents are en route by helicopter. ETA 15 minutes. They've been looking for her nonstop." Zoe's eyes filled with tears. "They're alive?" "They never stopped looking," Elias said. She nodded slowly. "I thought they forgot." "They didn't," he whispered, "and neither will I." 15 minutes later, the room was filled with the sound of rushing feet and choked sobs. Zoe's parents, Ben and Rachel Carter, burst in, sweeping their daughter into their arms. Rachel collapsed to her knees. My baby. We never gave up, not for a second." Zoe held them like she'd never let go again. Behind them, Elias stood silently, watching the family reassemble in pieces. Rachel looked up, eyes red. "Are you the one who saw her?" Elias nodded once. She rose shakily and embraced him. "Thank you for seeing her when we couldn't," she whispered. Ben Carter followed, shaking Elias's hand hard. "They told us you broke your post, that you fought the bastard with your bare hands." She signaled. Elias replied simply, "All I did was listen." Zoe emerged from her parents' arms and reached into her backpack. She pulled out a small, crumpled piece of folded paper and handed it to Elias. He opened it. A drawing. A stick figure in a bearskin hat. The words beneath it in uneven handwriting. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. 3 days had passed. The storm had not. News stations around the world ran loops of the video. A Queen's Guard breaking ranks. A child being pulled from the arms of a predator. A ceremonial soldier shedding centuries of silence in favor of one defiant command. Let go of the child. Staff Sergeant Elias Ward had become a symbol. But inside the quiet chamber of the regimental headquarters, he sat alone, back straight, dress uniform immaculate, waiting for judgment. The door opened. Captain Havers entered, expression unreadable. Sergeant Ward, he said, sitting across from him. As of this morning, your official report has been submitted to the Ministry of Defense, the Palace, and Senior Regimental Command. The protocol violation, the unauthorized movement, the use of force, all documented. Yes, sir. And we've received more than 20,000 emails and messages from child protection agencies, from veterans, from ordinary civilians, even from Buckingham Palace. Elias said nothing. Havers stared at him for a long moment. Every single one of them supports your actions. He slid a document across the table. It's the unanimous recommendation that no disciplinary action be taken. Your breach of protocol will be formally recorded. Only so, it's clear this was not a precedent, but an exception. Elias nodded slowly. Attached, Havers continued, is a commendation for extraordinary judgment in a high-stakes safeguarding situation. For a man like Elias, devoted to order, discipline, chain of command, it was the only resolution he could accept. Thank you, sir, he said quietly. Havers leaned forward, voice softening. You did the one thing no rulebook can teach. You listened to your gut, and you saw what others didn't. And because of that, a girl is alive. Elias was granted leave, not disciplinary, compassionate. He didn't argue. He needed the time, not to recover physically, though his arm was still bandaged, but to process. 2 days later, he stood outside a modest house in Surrey. Zoe Carter's house. She had sent the invitation herself. Crayon letters on paper, hand-delivered by a liaison officer. Please come see my garden. I want to show you I'm okay. Rachel and Ben Carter met him at the door. Come on in, Ben said, ushering him through. Their home was full of new light, still fragile, still careful, but brighter. A social worker had been assigned, therapists too. But Zoe was laughing again, and she was eating, sleeping, drawing. She sleeps with the paper you gave back, Rachel whispered. Her name tag. She says it's proof that someone saw her. In the back garden, under the soft shade of a pear tree, Elias saw her. Zoe was braiding a crown of daisies with 2 other girls, one blonde, one brunette, both younger. My daughters, Elias said, half to himself. Charlotte and Emily had been confused at first. Why are we here? They'd asked in the car. To meet someone who was very brave, Elias had said, and someone I want you to know. Now they were laughing, running, playing. Zoe had invited them into her circle like they'd been friends for years. Later, as the children ran ahead, Elias sat beside Ben at the garden table. You know, Ben said. They told us if you hadn't intervened when you did, Reeves would have had her on a plane that night. There were forged documents on him, an untraceable flight manifest. Elias's jaw tightened. Rachel joined them. They also said, he's wanted in 2 other countries. There are other missing children who might have been saved by what Zoe did. Elias looked at his daughters. And what she did, Rachel added, she only knew to do because her teacher showed her. One quick video, a hand signal. That was all it took. They were quiet for a while, listening to the laughter echo. She was so scared no one would believe her, Rachel said. And then you looked. You really looked. Why? Elias didn't answer right away. Then, I've seen what it looks like when someone's afraid to speak. I've seen it in war zones. I've seen it in victims who survived only because someone finally paid attention. That day, in the crowd, I saw my daughters in her face, and I knew I couldn't do nothing. As the sun dipped lower, Zoe approached him again, this time with a different piece of paper, a new drawing. This one had 2 stick figures, one tall with a red jacket and bearskin hat, one small with a crown of daisies. Above them, words written carefully. You saw me when no one else did, and now I see me too. Elias knelt. You are not invisible, Zoe. Never again. Promise me something? She tilted her head. Promise me you'll grow up knowing your voice matters. That if you're ever afraid again, you'll use it. Loudly. She nodded solemnly. And I'll teach other kids the signal too. Elias smiled, blinking back a tear. Good. Then you'll be the one doing the saving. The next day, Elias returned to his regiment. He resumed ceremonial duties, tourists snapping pictures of the hero guard without quite realizing who stood beneath the bearskin hat. But something had changed. In him, in the crowd, in the world. The Ministry of Education began placing posters in classrooms across the UK, illustrated charts showing the international distress signal Zoe had used. TV anchors ran stories about safeguarding awareness. Police departments received floods of calls from schools asking for training. And all of it, every shift, began with one small girl who refused to stay silent, and one man who listened. At the end of that week, a little envelope arrived for Elias. Inside, a photo. It showed Zoe, grinning, standing in front of a whiteboard with her class. She was holding up her hand, closed fist, open palm, then pressed together. The caption beneath the image, "We're learning how to be seen." On the drive home, Charlotte asked again from the back seat, "Daddy, you broke the rules, didn't you?" Elias glanced at her in the mirror. "Yes," he said honestly. "Because of that girl? Because of what was right." Charlotte nodded thoughtfully. "Good." Emily chimed in. "Would you do it for us?" Elias didn't hesitate. "I'd do it for any child, but especially for you." Charlotte looked out the window. "Then I think rules should know when to move aside." Elias chuckled softly. "Me too, love," he said. "Me too."